All right, welcome to episode 2 of Terminal Chat. Before we get started with tonight's episode, just want to real quick thank. I had some people reach out to me directly after the first episode and say some really nice things about it. So that really meant a lot to me, and I really appreciate all the people that took time out to do that. Tonight's episode, we're talking about WoW Classic and Patheon. I've got SurferDave here with me. He's actually leading the Classic WoW offshoot of the Rainborn Guild. And if you're not familiar, Rainborn is a Patheon guild, but Patheon's going to be quite a ways out. So in the meantime, we got an offshoot that's going to be playing Classic WoW. And he's been doing a great job. He's also a streamer, and he has a really great stream. So, Dave, is there anything else that I need to let people know about you?
No, sir. You nailed it, man. Thank you for the shout out. I appreciate it.
No, he does a great job. He has characters and Tiki Bar, and it's really fun times. And we've been doing a couple of retail guild events, and he's streamed some of that stuff. So it's been really fun.
I try to make it immersive for everyone. I think it's been a good time just to get the community together, and the fact that we have a guild for Classic WoW being made up of majority of Patheon, which kudos to you. You brought in quite a bit of the community. So well done there, man.
Yeah, you're welcome. And yeah, I'm the fact that we have I love that it's predominantly Patheon fans that's in our guild, but also one of the things that's made me even more excited about Classic is that we have this guild of great people, but they're all, for the most part, new friends that we're making as we kind of go back in time and re-experience Classic WoW. So, speaking of the re-experiencing Warcraft, briefly, if you will, describe your experience in Warcraft, especially vanilla. Anything that you want to talk about with what you've experienced and your impressions of WoW, different things that you might want to let us know.
So WoW has been the game that I've always had the anti-crush on. It's basically, I felt like I've always been bitter to WoW. I played it. I played Classic WoW with a lot of my friends who were in college at the time, leveling up a hunter. I enjoyed it. I did not raid, mostly due that I was at that point in my life where I was pretty much heavy in college, and also had I probably think my second actual real girlfriend. So my time to really get into that raid scene were few and far between. Prior to that, it was EverQuest, and that was the last time I had raided. But I have this love-hate relationship with WoW, and mostly because of a game I was really passionate with, which was called Vanguard Saga of Heroes. Yes, it had a lot of bugs. It had a lot of issues. But I saw through that because there was no game coming down the pipe that was going to produce what we're going to see with Patheon, a group-focused game with kind of some downtime community. At the end, these are kind of games that bring a community a lot closer, just like Classic WoW is doing.
Right.
And what we're going to be doing. Look at our guild, for example. We're very close as a guild, and we haven't even started playing yet. That's kudos to these type of games that, it just goes to show that it's still alive. It's still out there. People still want to have conversations, still want to make friends where, it's going to matter. And that's where community matters, in my opinion. But Vanguard had everything that I wanted, that and more, to be the successor of EverQuest. EverQuest 2 didn't have exactly what I was looking. Vanguard should have been the true EverQuest 2. Unfortunately, It was driven by a lot of bugs, a lot of politics. It's public knowledge and stuff, but that didn't stop me or my wife from playing. But while that was happening, while I was playing Vanguard, unfortunately, it was always being compared to Burning Crusade, or towards the end of Classic / Burning Crusade coming out.
So, did you play during vanilla, or
I did?
When did you first? What time frame?
I started playing, I would say, a month after launch. At the time, I was in EverQuest 2, very excited for when it finally came out. It was a very hyped game. I had a lot of bugs, and it didn't live up to the hype and what I was expecting coming from EverQuest 1. But then there was this game and rumblings of World of Warcraft. It wasn't big yet, but a lot of my friends did not have that master PC race type of computer where they were still on outdated machines, but there they were playing computer games, and I was kind of taken back by that because they didn't have the computers, in my opinion, to run it. But WoW ran on anything. So I went there and I had a blast. I played and I was leveling up. It was cool. At the time I was living in a kind of like a frat house, but we all played during the week in between study times and whatever. But then I got invited to eventually I got invited to the early beta, I want to say 1.0 or 2.0 of Vanguard. And that's where my passion was, like I'm an EQ guy at heart and I liked their vision. I was following it pretty closely. So when I got invited, I went full swing and trying to help that game become the best it can be.
Didn't Vanguard release slightly after? Was it about a year after WoW came out?
Yeah, I want to say like a year and a half. Okay. It's been a while. I can't really recall, but I can recall of basically at that time you had to make a choice, right? You had to pick a team. You were either going to be a Met fan or a Yankee fan growing up in the same state of New York. So, I chose the underdog and I went with the Mets here in this situation. I went with Vanguard, and I was all in making this work. And when you're all in a game like that, you just see past a lot of the negative.
Did you come back for any of the expansions?
Yes. So at one point in Vanguard, we beat all the raid content faster than they can put out for us. And I mean, not only beat it, we got every person in the guild fully geared to the max that they possibly could, epics, whatever. And at that point, we were done. We made a call and said, hey, this game doesn't offer what we want anymore, or just not giving us enough content. And it was a hard moment for me and my wife because we were kind of saying goodbye, and it was never going to be the same. And this is all before the free-to-play model that came out with them and Sony. But we said goodbye at that time. We would come back to Vanguard, but not like the way we were. But we all went to WoW, majority of us, and headed up with the new expansion that just came out, like I would say a week later, was the Wrath of the Lich King. And we went full force in there, and I had a great experience there.
Cool. Yeah, I had played a few MMOs before Warcraft, and they each had things that they excelled at, things that they did amazingly well, in maybe very, very different ways than Warcraft did. But when World of Warcraft first came out, it was just, I think it was the first, and maybe even to this day, the only MMO that I would consider like a masterpiece, just like across the board. Like, you can nitpick things here and there, but it just, in so many different ways, it was a 10, right? It just really blew me away. I started playing as a hunter, eventually moved over to a shaman, and I was in a PvP guild. I really enjoyed doing PvP, but we kind of got started into raiding. Like the MMOs that I'd played before, never had really done raiding, and I really enjoyed that type of gameplay. Getting everybody in a huge group, going up against these bosses, and the elation when you beat them, finding the loot. We, like I said, we were a PvP guild, so we were never all that successful. I think we kind of petered out in Blackwing Lair, but I mainly played vanilla, a little bit of Burning Crusade. And then I came back for Cataclysm, went pretty heavy into Cataclysm. And that's kind of a controversial expansion, but I enjoyed it quite a bit. Especially the raiding and the dungeons. They made the dungeons a lot harder, and I enjoyed that. And then I came back for Legion, played a bit in Legion, and that was pretty good.
My wife really enjoyed Legion quite a bit recently, leveling up a new tune. She said Legion was by far her most favorite expansion in leveling. I didn't get that far at that time, so I wouldn't know. Would you agree? Did you like Legion in the leveling?
Yeah, I guess so. Like, the leveling experience is so different. They've taken all the challenge out of it, but they've kind of perfected the art of the quest in terms of having each quest have sort of a fresh feel to it. The way that they present the story to you is really well done, and so from that aspect, yeah, it's really good. But it's sort of like, it's a really good single player game, and not necessarily a great MMO, if that makes sense.
No, 100%.
But I wanted to point out, like, I started out as a hunter, and the hunter epic bow and staff quest, I did that, and that was one of the highlights of any era of WoW for me. It was such an awesome series of quests that you had to do that really tested your skill using like specific aspects of playing a hunter. I wish they could do more things like that, and that's one of the things that I hope Patheon. I know they've talked about having some things like that, but class quests were always some of my favorite parts. Like, I know it's difficult because obviously you invest a lot of time, and then it's only for one class. So I understand the reasons why they can't have it more of it.
Oh, fair enough.
Okay, so moving on to the next topic. This is quite a big topic. We'll kind of break it up into three parts. But when WoW came out, I know you were an EverQuest player. I personally wasn't, but Blizzard they did a lot of things to reduce some of the punishing mechanics that were in EverQuest, and people agree disagree about that, but I don't think anybody would argue that it didn't help them expand their audience. Like for EverQuest, like 500,000 subscribers. They were king of the world, and then Blizzard released Warcraft. It eventually blows up into like 12 million. So, and I think a big part of that was how they made it more accessible. But right now, you get this sense from a lot of people in the community that things have kind of gone too far in that direction. And you see it with the push for Classic WoW, that people are kind of wanting to go back towards some of those more punishing mechanics.
Oh, sure, man. That's life. That's life if you think about it. Like think about it. What we're living in right now, 2019. I mean, what's in theaters right now? Everything that was out in the late 90s, early 2000s. People tend to like now more practical effects, where growing up, it was always about the special effects and how much can they push the effects and the effects. I mean, people prefer Jurassic Park, the first movie's effects versus the latest movies. And the same can be said in, with EverQuest, and, EverQuest pushed the limits, and it was hard and it was rough, but people liked it. But at the same time, it was hard and it was rough, and people wanted something a little bit easier. And WoW came out with this revolutionary system, this whole questing system. For a game that was called EverQuest, there was not that many quests, right? And then here's WoW giving you these tons of quests, and it was definitely not as harsh coming from that. The leveling was pretty tough, not EQ tough, but definitely tough. And it was the right time. And then Burning Crusade, Foul Foot, Wrath of Lich King, and so forth. Right. But now so many years have passed, right? And now people are like, well, you know what? What got me into these games? Why am I burnt out? Well, because it's kind of become a handholder to a degree, and it's kind of like we've forgotten who we are. And I'm saying it as an MMORPG. So these games, from us, the players, we long for that experience again, because enough time has passed and we want to play it again. And in my situation, I want to show my son what a hard game really was like, and where you had to really earn something. So
yeah, there's definitely a nostalgia factor.
The nostalgia factor in 2019 is very in. I mean, people rather play right now a Nintendo Mini on their TV versus buying the latest and greatest game for $59 on Steam.
I've got sort of like three particular areas that we can look at. So like there's the question of should we go all the way back to the way things were in EverQuest, where it's super punishing, or maybe try to find a sweet spot where, kind of between what Warcraft did and what EverQuest did, or maybe even just kind of a little bit more towards the not so hard side with Warcraft. But the first one that I want to look at is in terms of solo play. So how accommodating should the game be towards somebody that might want to solo versus playing in a group?
I think EverQuest, I will say, if there's one thing that they could take from EverQuest, was how they handle soloing versus grouping, and having specific classes having that ability to solo. A mage could solo, a wizard could solo, a druid could solo, right? And a necro could pretty much solo too. I think that they can take a page out of EverQuest and bring that concept over. I don't think every class should have that ability to solo. but I don't. This is a group centric game, right? So you want to promote that. So you don't want to have the ability for everyone to solo, but there's got to be a means on that slider, right? I think it comes down to also like, okay, these couple classes in Patheon can solo, but they shouldn't be getting just as good of experience.
I do like what VR has said about this issue. They've said that they're designing the game for a group of players.
Yep.
But that doesn't mean that you won't be able to solo, and that might mean certain classes are a lot better at soloing, or maybe you have to tackle mobs that are a little bit lower level. So it might be slower, but it's up to the player to find ways to solo. They're not going to design around it. And I think for the game that Patheon is, I think that's a good way to go at it, because the grouping element is really like one of the core foundations of the game. I don't think they need to say, okay, well, let's do it the way that Warcraft did. I think sticking to their guns is the right way to go. I think they're, as far as like attracting WoW players, it could be an issue for some. I think some, there's a segment of players that just really enjoy leveling solo, but I think at least a sizable chunk of the WoW Classic fan base would be open to it. It can be scary, right? So I think there are some things that Visionary Rounds could do to sort of ease players in, because you hear this is a grouping game, you got to have a full group, and that can be kind of scary, because you think back to the times that you got stuck in the city trying to find a group for some dungeon or something, and you couldn't get a tank, and you just wasted your whole night, and you're like, okay, is that going to be a typical experience for me, just logging in and not being able to do anything? And hopefully it's not. I don't think it will be.
Well, because they have showed streams now with in pretty difficult group makeups of not having all the right classes. Can it be done? And it can.
Right.
It's just a little, your EXP is not flowing as fluent, and it's a little bit more of a challenge. Where in EQ, if you didn't have the tank, it was tough. I mean, but they're showing like you could do it, like most likely with a monk, definitely. It's just, you're just gonna have to be a little cautious, and you're gonna have to know your limits, unfortunately. But the difference is their goal is to be like, okay, you can do this. It's just where EQ was like, if you were missing one of the Holy Trinity, you could not. I think they're going to be able to. They're trying to make the happy medium. Like, yeah, this will work, but it's going to be slower.
I think having sort of a gradual build up to where you need a party,
which is why 6-man groups is crucial, in my opinion. Because if you're running 5, you can still probably do the dungeon with the monk and the healer and the DPS, especially if we got a CC class in there, so that you can still progress. And then if you finally get that tank that logs in, you're good to go. That's why that 6 spot, I always feel in every MMO, every group should be 6-man, because it's leaving that extra spot just in case that so-and-so class, especially in a game where it's group heavy. Every game should be 6-man.
Something else that they've talked about is how they're very aware that with it being a group-focused game, that they have sort of responsibility to do certain things to like put systems in the game. And they've talked about a mentoring system where, if you're a higher level and you got a buddy that's lower level that needs some help, you can. It's actually inspired by the sidekick system from City of Heroes, but you can like mentor down so that you're essentially operating like you're at the same level as your lower level buddy. So you're not just going in and wiping everything in one hit and removing all the challenge.
Right, exactly.
And they've talked about matchmaking, not in terms of like the LFD and LFR where you're put into a random group or anything, but just helping you find people that are good matches for whatever you're trying to do. And a caravan. So they've got various systems that are going to hopefully do a good job of keeping people from that nightmare scenario where you log in and you can't do anything because you can't get a group. So.
Oh yeah, and you know what? This is another thing that I'm excited about. One word: guilds. Guilds are going to have actual meaning again. In a game like Patheon, you're gonna want to have a bigger type of guild, and you can go with a big guild and be able to know everyone by the time you hit 60. We're in a big guild, and even in a game like Classic, you might not group with someone, But a game like Pantheon, where it's so group focused, you're gonna know just about everyone that comes into that guild or in that guild already, and you're gonna learn to work together. And if someone's not picking up their slack, you're gonna, you can't just be like, well, I'm just quitting this dungeon and going to the next one, or I'm just quitting this guild. Your reputation's on the line now, and we're gonna see that in Classic, which is nice because you're not gonna get that in Classic either. So yeah.
All right, let's talk about the death penalty, because that's another big instance of something that Warcraft took a very punishing mechanic and made it very, very, very casual, if you want to use that word.
Oh yeah.
So, what do you think about the death penalty in Pantheon? How far towards one or the other is the ideal for you?
So, the death penalty not being harsh at all in Classic, I think, is a symbolism of basically, because they had EQ devs working on this game too, right? I think that was basically saying, yeah, we're tired of that, after all these years. So that was them being like, let's eliminate that. Now, again, remember we're saying years later, all this has happened before and all this will happen again. It's basically it's the quote right now in 2019. I'm very for a strict death penalty, but I don't think it should only be one class that can get you that experience back. I think there should be at least 3 or 4 classes that can give you that.
Yeah, I agree with that. And we can kind of look at the death penalty on 2 fronts. There's the experience loss, and then there's also the naked corpse run.
Oh yeah, and a lot of long nights.
The idea of the naked corpse run, to me, I really don't like it. I think if VR was looking for some middle ground to find between the two, I would say do something about the naked corpse run, but keep a significant experience loss and address some specifics about that.
Let me ask you, what in an MMO like Pantheon, are you looking for something as real as can be, or are you looking for just a game that has the group mechanics kind of like just to kill the time? It comes down to being what type of player and what kind of game you're truly looking for.
If I was looking for realism, I would be playing on a permadeath. I'm kind of like, if you're gonna make me res naked and then run back to my corpse, just kill my character off. Like, I do like playing in some permadeath scenarios, but I think like if you're gonna let me stay alive after I die, just let me keep my stuff. Like, my main objection to the naked corpse run is from the perspective of time, right? So like, if I've got 3 hours to play, and let's say I spend 30 minutes getting a group together, going to a dungeon, and we're like 30 minutes into that, so an hour into the night, and something goes wrong, right? And we end up dying. I'm okay with taking an experience loss. That comes with making your death matter. But if you're going to put me naked, my whole group, back at the wherever you res, and now we're naked, and we got to go get our items, or like whatever, whether you have to get other people to come help you, it just seems like such a hassle, right? I don't want to be hassled to that degree. I'll take the experience loss, and I can go re-earn that by playing the game, like, investing more time into it. But it seems like an unnecessary, just demoralizing hassle to make people start from in a hole. It puts you in a hole that you have to climb out of just to get back on even ground in a way that I don't really care for. So is what I'm saying, does that jive with your experience as somebody that actually went through all that stuff in EverQuest?
You know what it was with EverQuest for me and for everyone that played it? It was respect to E and PvE. It was harsh, but you respected the landscape around you. It was one of those things like, you didn't just jump out there, but it also led your imagination. Especially me, I was 16 when I started playing. Like, I remember just going to sleep after having a bad night, and it didn't end there from logging off. It like continued in your dreams. It was like that, like that intense of a game, I also remember nights where I was ready to log off after a great group at 10:30 at night, got school the next day, and I died deep in, lower guck, and now I got to go get my corpse, and because if I try tomorrow, there's no guarantee, and I wanted to get it back right then and there. You had to work it, and sometimes if it's guild or friends, like the more aggressive a game is, especially in a PvE environment, group focus as EQ was, the better experience you're going to have from a community standpoint. I kid you not, because you have to band together. I mean, you watch like all these zombie movies, right, and TV shows, and look at the group makeup, right? It's all the people in a group that would never be friends in real life, or like they would judge each other to the max degree. But you know what? You look at each other and you see how harsh the environment is. You look at each other and says, "We're in this together. We got to make this work." And that can be said for EverQuest as well. So a harsh environment brings out the best in community, brings out the best in cooperative gameplay. So I am very much for the harsh environment. But I'm okay with how you guys feel too, which is why I still think there should be specific servers for specific players.
Interesting. Yeah, no, I mean, I guess I'll have to, if they do the Naked Corpse runs, which if I had to guess, I think
you're gonna
could be wrong,
and love it at the same time.
To use it, like, to make an analogy, it's like, okay, let's say you break some law or something, and you get a fine, but then so you got to pay this fine off to the government, but then they also like take away your driver's license. So it's like, okay, how am I gonna get to work to earn the money to pay the fine? That kind of seems like what the Naked Corpse run part of it is. It's like,
but you still find a way to pay it off. You still find a way to.
You gotta find a way. You gotta hitch your ride with your buddy, I guess.
Hitch a ride with your buddy. Those buddies take you down there to get your corpse. You'll send a message to Uber. That's sending a message to Shout in the Zone. Like
I guess
you can all be an analogy to each other here.
Okay.
We'll
see
one.
where the
if you never experienced it like that, like playing like that, like I can totally relate to the people that kind of don't want it.
I did a little bit
personal it's not the end of the world for me if they don't have that.
I played Asheron's Call, and
there you go.
There was item loss when you died, but there were certain things about the game. Like first of all, you didn't lose all your items, so like maybe that would be a way for them to sort of
gear. You're good.
Make a compromise, like where you drop some stuff from your body, but not everything. But then like in ACE, it was a loot hunting game, and so you would have like a bunch of armor sets and a bunch of different weapon types. So if you did end up losing a couple items that you were actually using, you probably had something else in your bag that you could swap in. So it wasn't as big of a deal. But I did end up, I remember one time I had the Gloves of Coordination on this hunter character, or archer, I guess. And I died in this dungeon, and I was like, okay, I'm just going to come back the next day and get them. And I ran back, and I ran all around it so many times, I couldn't find my body. And I was like, and another day or two went by, my body would have disappeared. And then I realized after the fact that there was actually 2 identical versions of that dungeon, and I had spent all that time searching the wrong one, and I kicked myself for that. But
oh man, that's I played that game too, and I remember having to grind the GSA gear so that you wouldn't lose it when you died. Very harsh game. That was right there with EQ. They were neck and neck. I mean, it wasn't as popular. They had 4 servers versus EQ had like, I don't know, 40, 30 servers, whatever it was at the time. But really unique game that was too. In fact, I like the way
I'd love to like. I definitely want to do an episode on. Definitely Asheron's Call, and maybe some other like old school like Shadowbane, and get people. I never played that one, but get some people on and just have them talk about these different old MMOs that did some pretty cool things back in the day. But anyway, downtime is the third and last part of it. Let's just briefly talk about downtime. It's probably like the most hot button issue of all of these. A while back, they did a stream, and like somebody watched it and with a stopwatch or something, like tallied it up, and they said that like 1/3 of the time the druid was sitting meditating. So what do you think about meditation and downtime and all that stuff? Like, Warcraft, you can sit down and eat and drink, and your mana and health bar jumps back up. So there's not a whole lot of downtime.
Yeah.
The meditation mechanic. Any comments about any of that stuff?
Sure. So that's one page you don't take out of EverQuest, because I saw Jim Lee. Now, if you don't know who Jim Lee is, or any of the people listening, Jim Lee was the man that created the 90s version of the X-Men comics. It was a huge hit. He said he was also a big EverQuest fan, and he said that he was able to complete a lot of his deadlines while playing EQ. Some people said that they studied for being a lawyer while playing EQ. That's not good because you're doing other real life stuff while playing a game. Now, I get it. There's an audience for that. I don't know if it's big enough to make a game, but here in the present time, that wouldn't stand a chance. And there's got to be a happy medium. Yes, there should be some downtime. I think a page out of classic WoW would be something that they could use here for Patheon. Maybe a little bit more harsher, or right about the same. I would say maybe a little bit more harsher.
If you were out of mana on EverQuest, didn't it take like 5 minutes, 10 minutes for you to regen just from 0 to 100?
Yeah, you could go get up and get a drink. I did push-ups. I would study. You can basically walk away. And it was cool though. But here it is also in a group sense. There was a happy medium to that. Running out of mana. Like, it wasn't about the parsing of how much damage you can do. It was about how efficient can you be with your mana while keeping some mana for oh shit situations. And that's where downtime and slow mana really was awesome. I just think they could probably find the happy medium. I don't think classic WoW's. I think
that's something they can play test, like
right, exactly.
In the alpha.
That's going to be data as far as statistics, and I think that's going to be player feedback. A lot of that's going to be the play. They're going to hear the old DQ players' feedback. They're going to hear the more current gen players' feedback, and they're going to probably put it in between the middle. I would say classic WoW and EQ, put it smack in the middle on mana regen, and then you're good to go.
Yeah, I kind of agree there. I actually really like the old vanilla WoW regen mechanic with the 5-second rule with wanding or being able to melee. As long as you're not casting, you can let your regen kick in.
Just judging from their streams and their most recent stream where they're at with stuff, they're obviously playing with the meters on how fast and how slow it is for regenning and stuff like that. I think that's going to be very community driven on that, where they're going to come up with their decision there. If there's anything they're going to really listen to the community about, I think that's going to be a big one, because that's going to be the make or the break of the game. Yeah.
All right. So that topic took a while, but it was. I think it's an important discussion. So with Warcraft, the Alliance and Horde faction, the split between them was a really big part of the experience. Patheon's sort of going by a different mold where you can group with anybody. However, they have said that there could be a PvP server that's split between good, neutral, and evil. So, do you like the Horde Alliance split faction, or the more open way that Patheon and EverQuest and some other games have done it? And do you think you might try that PvP rule set if they do have a 3-faction system on a PvP server for Patheon?
No, I have no desire for PvP in Patheon. Again, it comes down to the zombie apocalypse group, just random people of all works of nature here that would never really coexist together in a perfect world. But the environment's so harsh that you have to work together. It's survival. So for me, I don't really want that Horde versus Alliance. Doesn't say I don't like that in other games. Like, I love it in my classic WoW. There's a reason for it. It calls for it, but not in this game. We're all in this together, and we're just trying to survive and make it. And so we don't have to have a rough experience leveling or grouping. So I'm not a fan of PvP for this specific game. I love PvP. I'm just not playing this game for PvP. You know what I mean? I'll go play WoW for my PvP MMO. I'll go play what's another MMO like Black Desert Online. I believe has pretty good PvP. Mostly WoW is my PvP fix for like an MMO if I want to go do that. So I don't need that in this game. This game is catering to me as a PvE player. So for me personally, that doesn't mean for anyone else. By all means, there's a play. That might call for you. A lot of people had a great experiences playing EQ PvP. I just don't see the logic in it. The environment is harsh. It's you versus the environment. It's harsh. It's going to try to kill you. You got to work together, whether you like it or not.
It's something I might be interested in trying out. There's a lot of unknown for me in terms of how the game is going to play out. But if I do go on a PvP server, I think I definitely would do the 3 faction system. It seemed like with the faction system, the races, like you had a more meaningful connection to your race and the other races that you were allied with. In EverQuest, could you like temporarily flag yourself for PvP?
No. Oh, yes. I'm sorry. Priest of Discord. So there was a priest in the game, and you basically, when you come into the game, you'd have this Tomb of Discord on you, and if you handed it in to the Priest of Discord, your name all of a sudden became red. You were a PvP player on a PvE server, but you can only kill people that did that as well. And it was harsh, if I remember correctly. If you died,
were you able to go back? Or was it like a once you do it, you're stuck with it?
I don't know because I never did it. But man, I was curious on doing it a lot of times. But they also had like something I want to see bring back in games was you can go to war with another guild. It would last for like a week, I think it was. I don't remember the time, but it was like a whole week thing from what I remember. And like, so if you saw the other guild in the air, in the zone, you can kill them. It was awesome. Really cool.
Like one aspect of the PvP on the more old school type of games that I've always thought was really cool is like I remember hearing stories about the PvP server in Asheron's Call, and they kind of naturally split into 2 factions. There was like the assholes and the good guys basically, and the asshole faction would come in and kill all the newbies and take their stuff. But then you had the good guy faction that would try to protect them and try to build up the community. So it just seems like it's another layer of the community on top of what's already a very awesome community-based game. That could be pretty interesting to me, but we'll see how it goes. Moving on to raids and dungeons. WoW's had some really great dungeons and raid design. Are there any aspects or individual mechanics from any dungeons or raids that you think would be cool to see in Patheon?
Vanguard. That's like all Vanguard. Pull everything from Vanguard in that respect. For raids, pull a lot of the raid mechanics, especially in like Burning Crusade. It's such awesome raids there. I would say pull mechanics between Vanguard and Burning Crusade content, and even some like, and you know what? Give your player base the buffet, right? Give them raid content like EQ, where it was just like you have the numbers, you have the gear, you have the DPS. Let's see if you can do it. Like you don't need to move around. Let's just see if you can cut it. Like based on can your healers keep the tank up fast enough? A gear dependent fight. Give them that. Give them the fights that require movement. And you know what? Give them the fights that's going to kind of be the hybrid. That's kind of what Vanguard was. It kind of gave you a little bit of the two. While it didn't have much movement, it had enough. It was kind of like a in-between happy medium. So when it comes to raid and group content, give them the buffet.
Cool. We're just joined by a third person, Drantus.
Can I get a number 10, please? Small, please.
Regular curly fry with
Curly
fries. Actually, literally.
Yeah.
Can you guys hear me?
Oh, yeah. Okay. Get me a soda.
Hey, sorry, guys. I'm ordering food real quick. I apologize about that.
Okay.
Can I get a...
Okay, I'm gonna mute you.
Do not. By all means, do not remove this from your stream. This is amazing content.
That's really funny. All right, so I sent him a message. Where were we? We were talking about raids. Yeah, I like a lot of what you're saying there. I'm gonna go a little bit more specific in terms of there's one raid that really stood out to me, and that was the Firelands raid in Cataclysm. Okay. I really loved a lot about that raid. I mean, the first thing is you walk in and you've got this like vista of this hell zone of magma and fire and all these crazy different types of creatures that are just going about their business, and it looks amazing. And then a lot of the boss mechanics I thought were really cool. One mechanic that I've always liked is where you kind of have to split your raid up and do different things, and then the strategy in how many people you want to send to do different jobs and how you split everybody up to do that. I do remember splitting up for the spider boss, and you would like send some of your raid up. I can't remember her name, but she would kind of go up on top of her web, and you'd have to send some people up to attack her, and then the rest of your raids down below. And all these spiders are coming in, and you have to kill all these ads.
That is sick.
There was this, I think his name is Ryaloth. He's this big elemental giant dude. And what you would do in the fight is you could attack his legs. And you had to basically steer him around by how much you were DPSing either his right leg or his left leg. I know they are investing a lot in their climbing stuff for Patheon, and I think they already mentioned that the raid encounter that they've been working on for Project Fairthal is going to involve some amount of climbing. But yeah, the Firelands, that might be my favorite raid from Warcraft. What about dungeons? Anything in particular with dungeons?
No.
I like what Brad has said about having some massive dungeons, but they're broken up into different wings. So you might spend 2 hours doing this one part, and then you can come back the next day and go explore some other part of it for 2 hours.
Hello? Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
I can hear you.
Okay, cool. So Blackwing Descent was one of my favorite raids during Cataclysm. Did anybody else raid any of that?
Yeah. That was the one where there was the blind dragon, right?
Yeah.
One of the fights.
I can't remember the blind dragon's name, but it was Nixius. It was Nixia's brother, wasn't it?
Nefarian.
Yeah, Nefarian.
He was the final boss in it.
Yeah. And I just remember fighting that first boss. I think it was like Magma. It was like a centipede style boss.
Yeah. He was cool.
Yeah, and then there was the 3 golems after that, but you go to the right, to the left, and then you open up after that. And, God, that raid it was fun to me. That raid to me felt like Icecrown Citadel in Wrath of the Lich King.
Yeah. The other one on that tier I thought was pretty good as well. The one that had Cho'Gall as the final boss.
Yeah, you're talking about Bastion of Twilight.
Yeah, Bastion of Twilight. I enjoyed that one.
That one was fun. I remember getting during that time the first time our guild got that down. We had 10 people alive left, and he was down to 1%. Everybody was screaming, come on, everybody put the team on your back, let's go, that was a good time. I mean, to me, that was like a really big one after Icecrown Citadel. Going into that was really fun for me. And
I know the last raid tier in that expansion is the one where you fought Deathwing. I can't remember the name of the overall instance.
Dragon Soul?
Yeah, Dragon Soul. It had some cool aspects to it. I remember the raid encounter on the flying ship was pretty cool. I actually liked the part where you fought Deathwing on his back as well. I think there might have been some balance stuff, and there might have been some issues with it, but flying on the back of a dragon and fighting it, that's a pretty cool thing that you get to experience.
Yeah, that was a good one.
So, related to raiding, Brad was recently on this podcast called Countdown to Classic, and he was talking about some problems with raiding, especially in an open world game. Things like griefing and blocking other people by, I guess, killing the bosses, overcrowding. But he said instead of instancing, they're going to try to use some alternative mechanics to address these issues. And one example that he gave was having a door, when you go into a boss room, the door closes. And some things from Vanguard, like ghosting. But just in general with open world raiding, do you guys have concerns about it? Do you like these alternatives, or how do you think they're going to work out?
In Vanguard, it wasn't exactly open world. It was a hybrid between open world and instance. So what they had was shards, and there was like 4 shards of the raid dungeon, right? I don't know how they're going to do this with Patheon, but if they're doing this and they're not sharding or they're not instancing, they got to be big, and there's got to be a lot of wings, and they got to keep spreading out. Like, have one wing, you go all the way to the end, and then when you get to the end of that wing, now there's 3 wings to go through, and then if you go down one of those 3 wings, that one should split out to 3, and then or another 3. The mobs too, like if they're gonna do it like that respect, then like the mobs also should be locked out. It sounds.
With them saying that the raid sizes are going to be 12 and 24. They're definitely going to have to do something with like either almost non-existent respawn timers or very, very short respawn timers, because you can't have 12 people kill a boss and then not have it spawn for a significant period of time. That can't be like the way that the vast majority of the raid content works.
Well, again, it just comes down to the ambition of where they're going with this. I mean, if they're going to keep it all non-instance and they're not going to do any sharding, well, you got to make either there's got to be a rule set, unfortunately, whether it's lockout, so like the mobs can't hit you and you can't hit them, so you can bypass them, but you can't attack them and they can't attack you, or, it's got to be a big raid zone, very big.
Yeah.
Because let's just say, what if this game hits gold, in the respect of like they get a huge player pop and all the servers are full, and a lot of them at this point are raid guilds, and you don't want to be in a situation where you can't raid. It might be something they might have to do with sharding, where they like, okay, here's we'll open up a shard, so when you go in here, this area, just click on this NPC and it'll take you to the raid zone, but it's open, other guilds can go in there, or just do it where all the wings, like in Vanguard, they had a couple shards, but in the beginning, right, when they finally released Ancient Port Warehouse, the big raid zone, all the guilds came back out of the woodworks that had been gone, that hit 50 and got raid gear and then left. They all came back, and it was packed, and it was hard. It wasn't like you would be like, all right, well, I guess we can't really do that today. We're going to have to go do this type of thing. It was who got there first. And if you're a Pacific Standard Time guild and you raided later, you were kind of screwed a little bit.
This has been a topic that's come up quite a bit on the Discord, and there's been long discussions about it. I think the best thing that they could do is actually, instead of trying to come up with some solutions and basically do like a hybrid where, it's like kind of like open world in some ways, but it's also kind of like instance in other ways. Instead of trying to do that, I think it would be better to just kind of split it 50-50 and make half of the raids fully instanced, and you get all the advantages of instance raiding, and then the other half have it true open world, like there's only one boss that spawns, and it's a race to kill it, and maybe those are like super hard bosses that only the elite of the elite can kill them. And maybe they'll have the most highly desired items would be from those open world bosses that you have to compete to get. But like what you just mentioned about logging on and somebody's already killed this boss, so we have to change our plans. I really like the idea that there are raids that you can set a time for. Okay, our guild, we raid from this time to this time on this day and this day. And we, when we log in, we know what's going to be there for us. But also like having, sort of a competitive element, right? So the way Warcraft did it, they had instance raids. They also had open world bosses. But I'd like to see more of a even balance between that. The open world bosses, they were nice to have, but your Thunder Furies and your Hand of Rag and most of the stuff that people actually cared about was in the instance raids. if the rewards and the structure of the raiding scene put more of a prestige on the open world bosses than Warcraft did, and also added more, made them a little bit more involved. I think
options.
a model like that could work really well.
Well, it comes down to like giving the buffet. Give them. You're gonna have to give a guild options. You might log in with the guild with all you guys at 9:30 ready to go, and you'll be like, all right, well, we can't go here. Let's go there. You can't go there. All right, well, you know what? There's 4 overlands up. Let's grab them. You kill them. It takes you about an hour and a half. While you're down to the last overland, you already have an officer checking the dungeon and be like, oh, you know what? This guild's leaving. I've been talking to them, so let's jump in that wing or something like that. Like, I don't think the mobs, when you kill them, I don't think they're going to be dead for a day, like how it was in EverQuest and like playing a Fear or however it was, So, like, they got to have it like a reset. Like, there's got to be lockouts if they're going to do this open world. That's the only way it's going to work.
Yeah. When you have a raid group of 12, the math just doesn't work out with not having lockouts and not having very short respawn timers.
You got to have that timer. So, like, let's just take a scenario right now, right? We got one wing, and there's 2 guilds. So that means one guild's got to go first. Let them go first. Let them wipe it out. They can come back and turn back and leave, no problem, because they're all grayed out. That's one scenario that they could do. I don't think they'll do that because they're trying to keep it as, like, legit PvE with RP sense a little bit influenced into their gaming as well. So what I think is going to happen is one guild's going to go forward, they're going to kill everything, and the other guild's just going to stay behind them until they get to the very end of that wing, and now that wing splits into 2. So, like, that's the only way this is going to work. Yeah. Like, I don't know how else to do it. Like, the question is now, you can do that same situation, right? There's 4 guilds behind you instead of 2. An hour later, 2 hours later, a 5th guild comes in. Is everything going to be clear for them to just keep walking through? They're going to have to find their happy medium here, because judging by the newsletter that came out today and, this perception system and the climate system and how gear is going to, not the gear, the glyphs, they want you to be like, okay, you want to go to Mount Everest. Well, you can't just walk up there with like basic gear. You're going to have the resistance. You're going to have to wear the proper stuff to get there in a sense, So if they're going to put that much heavy influence into it, then they got to continue that with their raid progression as well. I think the only way to get through that, if they want to keep it as real as humanly possible, is just make those wings split like a billion freaking times. That's if you're going the realistic approach.
Let's say you're with a group going through some dungeon, like in Black Rose Keep, sorry. I see the benefit to having that be open world, and you're meeting other groups, as like a group of 5 or 6 people and interacting with them. But if I've got my whole guild together and we're 40 people, I've just never really felt that there's that much to offer by having multiple raid groups. And I like the idea of, like in WoW, when you log into zone into Molten Core, you've got to go through all these bosses one by one to get to the last boss. I don't really like the idea of you log in and somebody's already cleared half the zone for you. I just think some things work better as an instance for a raid group. And on the other hand, like, you picture like a dragon attacking a city, and that would be an awesome open world encounter where that thing is like killing random bystanders, and then some guild of badasses rolls up and fights that thing, and everybody's seeing this go on, and then it drops some epic gear for that group. Like, that's an awesome encounter that works well as an open world fight. But something like the Molten Core, I see that more as you go in with your guild and you fight your way through everything. And having a big group of 40 people in this corner over here, and then, I don't know. I don't see that as really improving the game. But, I'm open to seeing how it works out if they go the route of not having any instances, which I know that's a lot of the audience for Patheon is very adamant about not having instances at all.
True. Very true.
Zoltar,
let me ask you, do you have Drantus muted? I'm sorry. Yeah.
Yeah, he is muted. Well, that's the thing because he started talking and
Yeah. He's back. He's been trying to chime in. I just realized it. I was like, I don't think this. I don't think you real.
At first,
All
I
right.
thought he was talking over me, and I was like, "Oh, okay."
Yeah, no,
Well,
I think it's because you were at the fast food menu place.
Yeah.
That's
we heard
okay.
you're talking to your McDonald's drive-through or whatever it was. So I
Sorry,
muted you,
guys.
and then all of a sudden we started hearing you while you were still muted. But then I guess you went back to being muted. To,
I was just saying with the instance stuff. I wondered how that would work with power leveling in the end game of it, because you get a max level guy coming down to help you at level 5 in a low level zone, like say some tower or whatever. They can just like aggro it all, and you can just pick them off slowly.
yeah, I mean, I don't think they have any plans at all to do any instancing up, with the possible exception of some occasional story content. So like maybe there's a quest, and as part of the quest, you go to some little area that's instanced, or maybe an area of his own. You get your own instance just for the purpose of doing that particular part of a quest. But they've been at least pretty adamant that it's all going to be open world with that exception. And I was talking about just like my personal opinion is I would like to see an exception made for some of the raid content. I'd rather get the best of both worlds than sort of like a watered down hybrid of both.
I could see that. And you played EverQuest, right?
No, I never did.
Oh, okay.
Well,
So
I played a tiny little bit of Project 1999. I got to
okay.
level 14 or something.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's fine, no problem. But in their fourth expansion, which was Planes of Power, their way of instancing things was you would hail an NPC, and by responding to them saying like here or whatever you said back to them, they would put you in an instance of it.
Yeah.
It's kind of the same idea as walking through a portal in World of Warcraft.
I mean, there's definitely there's a reason why Warcraft implemented instances, and even Brad has basically acknowledged that they have whatever solutions they're gonna try. So if they do end up backtracking on that, I mean, prepare for a shitstorm, because there's I don't know if you want to call it a minority or a majority, but there's a section of the population where that is the hill that they will die on.
Well, yeah. After the newsletter today, I already found that out pretty hardcore in the Patheon Discord. Yeah, that was.
I went on a rant.
That was pretty crazy. When I was reading it, I was at work and I was reading the whole newsletter, and I was like, "Oh, cool. Okay, like interesting. This concept about the phasing of the element."
Yeah, I haven't had a chance to go through the newsletter all that in detail, but we can just kind of riff on Patheon for a bit about some of the different mechanics specific to Patheon, like the progeny system, and not the progeny. Never mind. The progeny I think has kind of been blackballed or at least sidelined. Perception. That's what I meant to say. And the acclimation and climate system, and I'm actually a pretty big fan of those. Some of these other MMOs like Ashes of Creation, they're doing this node system where the stuff that you do affects how the different cities get built and all this like trade stuff, and the world evolves based on the actions of the players. And to me, like those types of systems, when I read about that, it sounds really cool, but it seems like it's a massive technological challenge that may not actually end up being all that fun in the end. And I think like the perception system is actually a really basic system in terms of what is involved in it. It's basically just making the questing system a little more immersive, and it kind of reaches into different parts of the game, but I don't see anything like pie in the sky with it. And the same thing for the acclimation and climates is extremely basic, but I think they have the potential to have like a big impact in terms of how playing the game feels.
From what Joppa was saying, I really felt like in his newsletter, I really felt like what they were trying to get at was adding more strategic planning to the game. And I felt like when he was talking about it, that it was something he was listening to the community about. Like, I don't want to just be able to run to a place and then just kill some mobs and then finish that zone and go on. Like, it needs to be more involved, make you feel like you're more immersed into the game. And also, at the very tip top of it all, I really think it was just another way of them bringing just a new aspect to the game to give it a flair.
Right.
You know what it is? It's there's tension. No matter what they add in these newsletters, unless it says alpha, there's tension. And at this point, you question if the newsletters are doing harm or good for the communities. Like, to me, I love them. I'm like, yeah, sure. Yeah. Because we're in a game. We're us three. Looks like we're all going classic, right? We're on the same build, and we're excited about it. And we're like, yeah, this is perfect. Just go ahead, Patheon. Take as much time as you guys need. We'll be over here, for a year or two, and build that game for what you want. Some parents, there are parents out there that are like, yeah, take as much time as you want, because if you take 2 years, my son will be 6 and I should have more time to play anyway. There's the crew that's not doing anything. They have no game right now. They go back to Project 99 again for their third character. They're tired of it. But that's the type of game that they want. They want an EQ with updated graphics, and they don't want anything other than that. So they get upset when they come out with these new systems that are talking about perception or climate affecting. They're like, I don't care about this. I don't need this. Just give me my game with better graphics and the same type of system so that you can feel like they've played a different game. And then the community. And listen, as much as I like VR, I like a lot of the guys there. I don't know them personally, and I don't really talk to them in DMs or anything like that. But I know who they are, and I know their experience and where they come from. I'm a fan of them. So I want them to do good. And I understand that this is a dark year, but like a lot of people can't handle that because they're judging it that this is year 6. It's like, no, not really. They kind of rebooted a little bit when Java took over. So this is technically year 3, or year 2, right? Year 2 or 2. I would say year 2.5.
I would say 3.
3. All right, which is fine. Give them the benefit of the doubt. Let them go dark, and let's judge the game on Project Fairthel and see where it goes. Now, these newsletters that comes out, they don't hype it. They don't even mention it. They just release it. When that letter comes out announcing alpha or beta or anything that's going to be super relevant, you don't think they're going to hype it? You don't think that weeks prior that they're going to be like major announcement coming, and it's going to be reported by Massively. It's going to be reported by MMORPG.com. It's going to be reported on Twitter, all their social medias to get buzz around it. Because when that letter comes out, I'm going to tell you right now, the alpha newsletter is going to have hype before it gets released, right?
Yeah.
And it's going to be out there because that's going to put eyes on the prize. And that's the game here. So be thankful that they're giving you something versus nothing. And they gave a decent amount of information in this one. I like the system that they're giving, while other people are not, because they're not looking for that. They're seeing that and saying, that's irrelevant to me. Where's my alpha? But I get it too. This is not a game where it's a major company and you could just be on the outside waiting to pay. These are people that invested hard-earned money of their own money for this. So I get it too from their perspective as well.
I think there is some validity to the fear of the feature creep with the systems that VR, where they are innovating. They could possibly kind of go down the rabbit hole where the feature creep becomes a problem. I don't think that they're actually going to do that though. From what I've seen, they're actually fairly modest in terms of how big of a leap they're taking with these systems. But the other thing is people were talking about, well, look at what Project Gorgon did. I mean, I've played Project Gorgon for a good amount. If Patheon came out today and released something on the level of where Project Gorgon is, and it's not a fair comparison because that's a 2-person team, but if they did an early access like Project Gorgon is, it would be a disaster for the game. I guarantee you.
Yes, 100%.
Yeah, there's 2 things I agree with what Dave was saying, which was, first of all, the game is not supposed to be EverQuest at all. A lot of people want EverQuest, with updated graphics, like you said. but they're trying to create a whole new game, just kind of with the same creators, with the same intentions, but it's not the same game at all. And then the other thing was that I just bet my whole bank account on the fact that they're only sharing with you the most minute tidbits, and they have a lot of cool stuff that they want to show you guys. Kind of like you see a teaser trailer for a movie, but they hold back, main plot points and main story things and cool things they want to share. I really think they're holding back a lot of cool stuff.
I think there is some valid criticism. Like, I understand the idea of holding back and then you hit them with a big release and you blow everybody's minds. But I think like I said, I think there's some valid criticism that they could be showing off a little bit more, like back to like December or maybe even November, when they hired some effects artists and some animators. And since then, we've seen like a running animation and a couple of attack animations for a warrior. Yeah. They could
definitely
each month
showing more videos.
Yeah.
In one of my I posted something in Discord and I said, what they really need to release is just more video footage, just of what they've created, and they don't have to be spoilers. Just share some
resources,
cool, like some hype up cool stuff that they have.
But it comes down to resources, guys. This is someone had a beef with me when I said, they had said like, they shouldn't be spending resources on climbing, and I said, do you know their resources? For all we know, it could be an intern dev they hired, just to come in to get some experience, and he's been working on this. We don't know. But, like I could also say, do you like your newsletter? And they could say, yeah. Then I can be like, well, there you go. They just wasted resources to give you a newsletter. So if you want, to me, I don't need a newsletter at this point. It's for me, it's kind of at this point, it's, they do it for the community of Patheon. Those are the people that are clicking the refresh button every day to see if there's anything updating. They're doing it for those guys. And that's nice of them to do because they don't have to do that. They're a small studio, a very small studio, and they're still giving you something monthly of decent stuff, in my opinion, for a small studio. I get it. I'm frustrated. Listen, I put a lot of money into this game, my own money. So, a lot. And am I frustrated a little bit? Yeah, sure. I guess to a degree. I think the only flaw I see legitimately with VR is how transparent they were to non-transparent at all. I think that has since hurt them. I don't think they realized that it would hurt them this much, but I think it hurts them only from a small community standpoint. The thriving people that are hitting the refresh page is a small fraction. A lot of people realize this game is a ways away, especially from the last stream that they did, showing old content again. And, not much has really changed. The writing's kind of on the wall there. So some people might have written it off. But, at the same time, once this game gets into alpha, no one's going to care about how they handled the situation. Once this game is released, no one will ever, and if it's a successful game, no one will be like, do you remember that time they were just jerking us around and they didn't tell us anything that 1 year and it pissed us off. No one's even going to mention it. We're so, at this day and age, we're lucky to be even involved. My God, I knew nothing of Star Wars Galaxies until it was launched,
Winning solves everything. You can have your quarterback and your wide receiver hate each other, can barely be in the same room. But if you're winning games, if you're making it to the playoffs, winning a championship, everything's fine. If you're losing games and that's going on, then it's hell. So if they put out a game that's great, the most pissed off Patheon supporter is going to click on that button to buy the game, and they're going to subscribe and they're going to play it.
Yep, exactly. Be patient. It'll come. It's in a hard development. It's a small studio that's competing with Ashes of Creation, They didn't expect to be this big. Let's be real. When we saw that first video, they just wanted to make an EQ with updated graphics. It got bigger than they expected. They probably got money, and they had ideas that were bigger than they could probably pull off. Obviously, they had Joppa reel them in and say, yeah, we're not doing that. We'll maybe do that in the future, blah, blah, blah. This whole Project Fairthel is a big project undertaking. It's going to be the meat and potatoes of the game, it sounds like, at the very least, for the leveling, the core leveling stuff, and for the world environment in general. So, you know,
Yeah, they
they're also
said
they're putting a lot of pressure on themselves with that too. You know, the longer they wait and the less they say about it and not be as transparent, you know, they are putting a lot of pressure on themselves as well.
they mentioned in that VIP Q&A last month, they said, we're getting real close to showing you something. And everybody like was running around screaming, "Oh my God, Project Fairthel's ending. We're getting pre-alpha 5 soon." But I think they're probably talking about just doing a stream with the raid encounter. So
Co-Carnage
now
or
that they're
something.
like, well, we still have a lot of work to do on Project Fairthel, people are losing their minds because even with just that like that little one sentence or two, people jump to all these conclusions and assume that the game is ready to exit Project Fairthel.
Yeah, I did think that for a while. You know, I thought that, definitely thought Project Farther would be done by the end of this year. But you know, looking at it now, I just want them to take their time and do it right. And like you were talking about early access, man, if they released early access, this game would just drop dead so flat. So they need to.
Yep.
They need to take their time.
To go with the classic WoW reference, you think you want it, but you don't.
Yeah.
There you go. Perfect.
Yep.
I think we'll be fine. I think January, February, we're going to get some big info on Project Fairthel. I think that, in my opinion, I think they're targeting all the PAX events coming up in 2020 and moving forward. And I think Project Fairthel is going to be their meat and potatoes for that. So
Yeah,
expect.
I still think there's a good shot that they finish Project Fairthel this year.
I'm optimistic with that.
It's like a little bit after mid-August. There's a lot of months left in the year.
Yeah.
I think, you know, we could be having pre-alpha 5 in December.
Well, at the very end of the newsletter on one of those pages, the behind the design, they said that last little paragraph said they're going to share that video about, you know, the raid encounter with, was it the Sleepless or something like that on the Isle of something Storm? Yeah, they're going to be sharing like that video. I'm looking forward to that. Just want to see more of the game.
Yeah, I mean,
if anything I got from this newsletter is like, there's content coming. You know, like, there's some content coming down the pipe. But everyone just didn't see a pre-alpha and an alpha notice or a Project Fairthel release, and they just bypassed it. I think people went into that letter already pissed off before it was even released that they were going to be judging it without even reading it.
Probably.
That's what happened.
I think you might be right a little bit. Yeah. There has been some letters that I was disappointed with. I really do like the idea that they're doing now with releasing more lore behind specific characters in the game.
Yeah.
It's not like enough of, you know, like something to amp us up. Wow, oh my gosh, it's not shareable enough. You know what I'm saying? You can't share that video on social media with friends to get them hyped, to get them amped about stuff. So it wasn't, I think at coming down off of that stuff is what kind of gave people maybe that little less hope going into this newsletter.
Sure.
Spell effects, animations.
Oh yeah.
And character models. I've been dying to see the new Scar and Archive models.
Oh man, so I want to see I actually want to see.
I thought there was a good chance they'd come out this month, but cross some fingers for next month.
The Dark Mirror, I'm really excited to see what's going on with that. They should come out with some more class releases and race releases, I think.
Yeah, I think like if they just did one or two spell effects or animations not from each class, but from like one class each month, like they could have.
There you go.
Last month,
I like that idea.
Last month they had stuff for the shaman and the cleric. They could have split that in two. I would have been really happy with just some shaman animation, some shaman spell effects last month. And then this month they could have had the cleric ones. And it would have made me feel a lot better instead of putting them both in one. I
really like that warrior taunt.
Yeah, the taunt was cool.
Did you see that one? Yeah. They're just like thumb across
have a little something for at least one class every month. And it'll make, at least from my perspective, it'll make me much happier with that newsletter when it drops.
Guys, I have to head out and go to bed.
I really appreciate you guys coming in and talking.
Yeah, thank you for having me, man. This was a lot of fun. I hope we do another one.
Yeah, definitely. Like I said, I definitely want to do a Asheron's Call episode. So you're one of like a handful of other people that I've talked to in the
Cool.
Patheon community that are AC vets. So we'll definitely do that one, and let's definitely give a shout out to Rainborn Classic WoW Guild on Pagel. Launches in, was it 4 days now?
Yep, 4 days.
The hype is real.
Yeah.
Hell yeah.
I don't know if you guys saw my Twitter post. Yeah, I said my hype's real right now. I said for WoW Classic until Pantheon MMO comes out though.
Yep, I think that's a great way to word it.
I know you guys gotta head out, but Blizzard put out this little 7-minute video of some of the original Warcraft developers
That was
getting
awesome.
together and going through Dead Mines. And honestly, when they were talking about how they came together and made that game, and how so much of the success of it was just based on that they were passionate about making a game that they wanted to play. And I was like, I see that in Pantheon as well.
Yeah.
And
Yes, 100%. I see, and that's why I'm not ready to throw in the towel and go against the company, because these are guys at the end of the day that are passionate about the game they're making because they want to play it themselves, and that's awesome. That's just that's a lot of drive there. That means that they're not clocking in just for their 9 to 5. They're there to put the extra hours in, not only to cater to us to also make some money, but also to play a game that they want to play on their off time.
Absolutely.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, guys. Well, I guess that does it. Once again, thanks for coming in and chatting.
Hell yeah,
Had a really
dude.
good time.
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem, man.